So thank you so much for joining me today, Christopher. Could you start by introducing yourself?
Yeah, hello. My name is Christopher Barnes. I'm the head of school at the Midland School in Los Olivos, California, just inland from Santa Barbara and a couple hours north from Los Angeles.
So could you tell us a little bit more about Los Olivos, where you guys are located and the environment of your campus and surrounding area?
Yeah, our campus is 2,860 acres, um, and we have about 35 acres per student. And we're about a 40, 50-minute drive from Santa Barbara. We're quite close to the towns of Solvang and Santa Ynez, about 5 and 10 miles away. But our actual campus is quite rural. You do have to drive a little over 4.5 miles to get to our third neighbor. And one of our neighbors is the National Forest and the Los Padres Forest. So it's a very rural, simple campus.
Okay. And so how does this campus environment, 35 acres per student, impact the student experience for kids?
I, you know, place and place-based education is something that's been a part of Midland for the last 88 years. And along with that, certainly, experiential and project-based learning, where students have deep connections to their own learning, in particular, going with real responsibility. So the students do a lot of the work on campus, if not all of it. And that's a huge part of the student experiences where each and every student not only with taking responsibility for their own high school learning and development, going from being a child to being an adult, but also have very real and substantive responsibilities for themselves and for the care of their peers and others. We are in this together, and that's very much woven into the experience.
Mhm. So certainly that describes a lot about what students are involved in and how the location impacts what they're doing every day. How else might you describe just the vibe at Midland?
Yeah, it's an incredibly close-knit community. It's a community of about 100 students and adults. Um, and, with everybody working together to make our community run and thrive. There's an esprit de corps and a partnership and a level of collaboration amongst the entire community, which is profoundly unusual. Midland is famous for really doing the real thing. So for example, every school has an organic garden out behind the science building and they, grow some organic carrots. We have a 12-acre garden and we grow half our own food value. And that's an incredible effort and it's fantastic. And we recognize that we're not really producing the future farmers of America. We're growing kids into adults. But whether it's the farm or the work program or the academic classes or the college prep curriculum, those are the elements of our recipe, which is unusual. We do not look like other boarding schools. We are definitely not the nicest country club you'll ever be a member of.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean I've loved visiting Midland in the past because of that. It is
Yeah.
so unusual and so something I like to ask is what is something unknown or surprising about Midland? I feel like there's probably a lot, but maybe you can
Yeah,
share.
there's a lot. Everybody's always surprised when they come on campus and they're like, are these student dogs? And yeah, about 10% of the students in any given year have their dog with them on campus. It's totally fine. We've got plenty of space. And so students can bring pets to school. There's policies and the admission standards for dogs might be higher than for children, but that's an unusual piece of it. And then the other unusual piece is the degree to which our students take responsibility and operate without the traditional backstops to that. So we clean our buildings and classrooms and there isn't a professional cleaning crew that comes around after them to really do it, right? We really do it. And that sense of developing a work ethic, not only applied to your academics, but also to your general life, right? To see the joy of the job well done, right? And to appreciate the work of others, right? And no matter how menial the task, and really express craftsmanship with regards to our work and engagement, whether it's an English essay or simply sweeping up a classroom. Those are all things that are woven quite consistently into our curriculum and into the student experience.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great. What is a favorite dining hall food for students?
Perennial favorite is the salad bar because it's so good. Because it all comes from our garden. Um, Also, if you eat beef in our dining hall, it's free range grass fed cattle from our ranch. The bacon's really good because there are pigs. Um, so the food is really good. It is simple but delicious, and everybody has a different favorite meal. But I would say the salad bar and the produce is consistently gets high marks from everybody.
What is a favorite annual school tradition?
So every year at Thanksgiving, rather than having the students go home for Thanksgiving, we invite all the student families and all of their friends and their extended families and host about 500 people here for Thanksgiving and celebrate together. And this idea of breaking bread together as a community is something that we do once a year with everyone who's interested in. Really, strangers are welcome. But we also do it 5 nights a week. Sit down dinner with an adult at the table. How was your day? And this is how we connect and engage with students. And so I would say that a lot of these experiences around the student connection with adults is certainly one of the sort of engaging traditions. We also have yeah, enough. Yeah.
What is something new and exciting happening in Midland?
We just built a new sort of state-of-the-art barn and have a pretty incredible horsemanship program where students can work their way through different levels, up to and including, essentially signing out and disappearing with a horse and a friend on another horse and going off on a horseback ride. We have 35 miles of trails on our campus. Yet another expression of the level of independence and responsibility we give students. We're certainly the only school in America that tells you to bring an axe, a knife, and a lighter. And no, we don't have issues or challenges with that because students split firewood and light fires all the time. And by giving students the tools that they need to look after themselves and create their own comfort rather than be given or gifted their own comfort, they find a lot of self-confidence to go along with this sort of high performance. We find ourselves in a society today where an incredible number of very high achieving students. It's simply amazing what adolescents are doing these days. Their level of proficiency and everything else, but many of them do not have a commensurate high level of confidence. They've got the competence, but not the confidence. And so it's a real joy to be with students as they do that. I had a great experience a year or so ago where a student late one afternoon, nobody was kind of around, knocked on the door in the main office and said, "Hey, we've got a horse down in the pasture on a hot day." And the folks who run the horse program were off campus doing other chores. I said, "Well, what would they do?" And she said, "Well, I think we'd call the vet." I said, "Well, there's a phone list right there. There's the vet's number." She called the vet and told the vet what was up. The vet said, "I'll come out." I said, "Well, you better go out and meet the vet and show him where you're going." The two of them got a horse up, and we have a 15-year-old student who took responsibility and saved a horse's life, and that was just one afternoon's work. Happens all the time.
Yeah, that's incredible. What was a hot button issue on campus this past year?
Oh, I think like most schools, beyond responding to COVID, and the economic climate, which are, externalities, is also our recognition of how important our diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice work is at school. It's something that's been a part of Midland for a long time, but we, like most schools, find ourselves rejuvenated and recommitted to diving in deeper on that and really reflecting more deeply on what's the nature of our culture and community and what ways are we working towards making the world a more just and equitable place. And so, there's a real passion around that. And there's a strong group of students, another group of faculty, another group of trustees. And, as we not only, think and talk about what we're doing, but also engage with who we are and what we have done and how we can be better. And what is the nature of privilege? What ways, you walk around our campus and it doesn't reek of privilege. It's simple, it's not fancy. That said, actually, all of our graduates are incredibly privileged. They all go to college. And so understanding that and what responsibilities and duties that creates for each and every one of us to go out there in the world to make the world a better place. But along the way, to do it in community, there's a real strength in small community to learn these very hard skills about learning how to get along with someone. There's nothing quite like that experience of moving in with somebody and realizing you don't really like your roommate and learning to see the best in others right? And let them see the best in you, right? These are vital life skills, but also this is how we build trust. And goodness knows the world could use increasing spheres and circles of trust in the world, as it has been so eroded, and so sort of polarizing. So we see a real responsibility, and frankly, a newfound responsibility in terms of recognizing there's areas where we can do a better job, and we can and will.
Hmm. Yeah. So who are the teachers at Midland, and what types of roles do they play in student life and success?
I mean, they're an incredible bunch of people, who have in their own right incredible life experiences and went to colleges and universities and graduate programs. Um, and they all end up here because they're attracted to that sort of authentic engagement with young adults, right? It's less it's less didactic, us telling students, and it's much more partnership, right? It's much more, creating a learning environment on behalf of the students and letting the student do the learning, right? Which is a real truism of learning, right? And so I think that, in that sense of like we meet every single kid right where they are, start right there and move onwards. Um, allows students to flourish. We benefit greatly from, our scale. It's a small school environment, which means there are a lot of adults around. Class sizes are tiny. Typically they're 8 to 12. Would be a typical class for us. A huge class for us would be 14 or 16 students, and we have lots of classes that are under 6. So that allows a lot of personalization, and a lot of alignment of the curriculum to the specific kid and to their specific sort of edge of learning. Where do they benefit the most? And we have a faculty who really relish that opportunity. They also really relish going out in the garden and weeding a row. They also really relish going for a run, coaching sports. We have a particularly strong cross-country running team, soccer, basketball, volleyball. Our faculty are all deeply involved with the experience, not just in the classroom, but also around campus, working side by side with the students, playing on the athletic field, doing activities, getting out and just having fun, whether it's going for a hike or going to the beach and going surfing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So you've mentioned a couple already, but are there any specific unique programs or opportunities that you guys offer that you think really stand out?
Sure. Certainly, our horsemanship program is unique, and really sort of sets a standard with regards to engagement with. I mean, our graduates. It's not that they just learn how to ride a horse; it's that they learn how to care for horses, and develop that same partnership with horses. And can go anywhere with those horsemanship skills, whether it's Western or English or the racing environment or the breeding environment, all those things. So we've got a lot of students, that's been very successful. Our cross-country running team, the last couple of years has flirted with winning states. In the state of California, it's a highly competitive environment, so a tiny school that swings way above our weight in that particular sport. And then I would also say, there's some pretty unique educational opportunities. For example, every year our sophomores expand our solar panels, and they design, install, and do all the work. We're up to about 40% of our electrical capacity. Every single kilowatt of it done by high school sophomores. And so there's some unusual sort of traditions and patterns. And obviously being in California, there's real opportunities in foreign languages, in particular with Spanish, in terms of engaging deeply, that align tightly with our connection to place, right? Every student starts the science curriculum with Midland 101, where they learn the scientific method and scientific investigation skills in a context of our, natural history, geology, archaeology, all of which we have on our campus. And most of the kids walking around campus can ID all the plants on campus because they all took Midland 101.
Huh, but that's pretty cool. So how do you guys balance academic rigor with supporting students?
So we're a college prep boarding school, and UC approved. Our kids go off to an incredibly impressive array of schools. They all go to college. And we have a lot of support around that. We're quite clear that we're a college prep school. But our classes range from, Algebra 1 all the way to Calc 3, and we have one student this year who's a year or two beyond that doing, linear algebra and differential equations. And, we have, English ranging from introductory English for ninth graders all the way on to honors British lit. And, our faculty are pretty committed to the academic program and success of our students. That said, being college prep means we're getting students ready to be successful in college. And what we recognize, it goes hand in hand with that. If they get to college and they're academically ready for college, but they're not socially ready for college, it doesn't work out when you get to college, right? And so we have to do these things hand in hand. They have to be resilient. They have to have a high level of agency and advocacy for themselves, so that they're unafraid to go talk to a professor in college about, I need some extra help, or I didn't understand. But it's the Midland students who get to college to teach everybody else how to do their laundry. It's Midland students who get to college to teach everybody else, like, well, let's make a club and let's get together, let's do this. They have all of those skills. And we really do see an important parity between those things, but you can't have one without the other. And more and more in this day and age, people are recognizing how important that is, that we're graduating students who have a holistic education that is self-reinforcing.
Yeah, so it sounds like collaboration and students working together is quite critical. Are there particular areas beyond academics where you are more competitive, or is there any type of competitiveness between students ever?
Sure. As I mentioned, we're very competitive in cross country running. Different sports periodically have been competitive. Girls volleyball was very strong in the last year or two, and basketball occasionally. So it's sort of cycle soccer. I would also say, though, this is not a school where anybody cares. They might all know who got what on the test, but nobody cares that somebody got a higher grade than the other kid. It's not a competitive, between students, it's not a competitive environment. Again, the nature of, our scale, and there's a demand when you work side by side on so many fronts, to relish and find the common ground and build upon that, to learn to see the best in others, even when they're quite different from you. They're from a different country, they're from a different place. We have kids from rural places and very urban places. We have students from abroad, we have students from all over the country, even though 3/4 of them are from California, but the rest are from all over. 5 to 10% of the students are international students. And so that's a big part of the experience, not only as a learning environment, but also as an experience that reinforces our students' skills to get out there in the world and engage in positive ways thereafter.
So you mentioned the students are coming from abroad. Are there particular ways that you guys support international students, or I suppose, those urban students who are really not familiar with this Midland?
Sure. I mean, the social, emotional, and academic support of each and every student is a thread that runs through everything. And so, yes, of course, we have a nurse, a school counselor, and we have somebody who does academic learning support for individual students. We're really clear that we are not fundamentally remedial. We're really clear that we are not a therapeutic school. We're really clear that we need students who are choosing Midland. We're making a choice, and yeah, this is a little different, and in some ways might be harder than the other choices, but it's the right choice for me. And that creates an environment where, for example, our older students, in particular our prefects, have many of the responsibilities that adults would have in other school environments, right? There's a bridging and a weaving together of roles and responsibility, which is unusual around student support. So it would be it's very common for a prefect to have the responsibility and take seriously the responsibility of teaching a ninth grader how to do your laundry, because they didn't learn how to do it at home, right? Or how to push a mop. You'd be surprised, not many 14-year-olds know how to use a mop. And but that obviously builds a relationship, right, that then empowers them to help them when they're like not getting along with their roommate, right? But then there are also advisors for every single student is paired up with a faculty member. There are also some other existing support structures around that. And what we want to do is make sure we're providing enough support so that students can be successful, but we're not in the business of guaranteeing success.
Mhm.
right? When you get in those environments where you're guaranteeing success, there's so much scaffolding that the students don't develop any of that confidence they need in their abilities. We ask kids to do the work, to do it themselves. And how can I help you do it, right? What support do you need to do that? Happy to do that. So it's certainly a philosophy and a perspective. Um, and I don't, it's not tough love, it's clarity around expectations. It's a willingness to, clearly define what we're aspiring to achieve and say, well, what help do you need to achieve that, right?
Mhm.
And what support do you need to achieve that? That said, it does require that we have students and families who are game, who are excited about that sort of immersive, intensive environment. We certainly get more done in any given day than most school environments. I mean, the day starts in the morning and runs till 10 at night.
Yeah. So certainly Midland offers a very transformational experience. Do you have any examples of students who come to mind when you think of somebody who arrived, in one state of mind or kind of
Sure,
interested,
sure.
and then how did all of this transform them over time?
Well, all I've ever done is work with adolescents, and I don't know why, a 30-year career of working with teenagers. Um, and I really relish, and it's really fun to see that student who finds themselves and finds the best in themselves, right? And they do it, right? And we've got millions of those stories. It's a real blessing at graduation each year to hand our seniors a diploma and know in my heart of hearts and with full confidence, right, that they're leaving here with strong foundational skills in their academics and in their life skills, but also the work ethic to back it, right? A joy in the job well done, no matter how menial the task, an appreciation for the work of others, right? And those sort of foundational values and an understanding of what's the difference between my needs and my wants, right? And thinking carefully about those kind of things because they've been challenged to do so over the course of their time here. And we had a student who, a few years ago decided she was going to cook dessert for the whole school 47 times because it's a prime number, and she thought that was cool, right? But even better, the next year as a senior, she said, well, now I'm going to pass it on, and I'm going to cook dessert 47 times with 47 different people,
Mm.
right? To make sure that I pass this on, right? And Maggie was an incredibly talented student, went on to be a Gates Scholar and is on a full ride to UPenn, is an amazing person, and incredibly academically talented. But the rich story behind Maggie and Maggie's experience at Midland was about a deep connection to community and making dessert for people. And I have my own kids are here at Midland, and one of them that it learned to make dessert for Maggie and follows in her footsteps. Um, and he could spend a free period polishing an English essay from a 97 to a 99, but oftentimes he'll spend a free period in the kitchen cooking dessert for the whole school. That's the young man I'm interested in graduating from high school, that inspires me. And seeing that behavior in our students and seeing them think carefully about when I'm going to put my needs first and when I'm going to put our needs first. And can I do both? And finding the places where those align. Those are the inspirational moments and stories. And we've got kids who are off doing amazing things in the equestrian and the horse world. We've got kids who are off at graduate, or in engineering programs and working for name brand companies, doing engineering and business. We have the full gambit, and I think that makes me feel confident that we're providing those foundational skills. We're not trying to teach kids to be something in particular. We're trying to teach them the skills so they can be and do anything,
Mhm.
right? And that clarity around get the basics right. Um, that's what we do really well, right? And it's different for every student. We have some students, we have a portion of our students who come here are profoundly high achieving students. They arrive ahead, and they're a real challenge to support and really exciting and fun, right? And we have other students who are not in that category, right? But we find a 4-year path and growth cycle for each and every student that really pushes them. And that's really exciting to see and see where they go and how they lead the rest of their lives.
Mhm. Yeah. So it sounds like you have, a whole wide range of students, both just, in upbringing and background before they arrive in Midland, and in terms of, academic
Mhm.
um, prowess. What sorts of qualities are you looking for? What makes for a good Midland student,
Sure.
somebody who will be successful?
We're always really hesitant because we're not, we don't want outdoorsy kids. We love them and we have a lot of them, but and what we really, really want is the student who goes and digs into the website, comes by for a visit or visit interviews with us online, whatever it takes, right? And comes to that place where they recognize that this is where they want to be,
Mhm.
right? Because if we take an incoming group of 20 some odd students in each grade and 25 kids and they all have chosen this,
Mhm.
magic happens, right? So that's probably more important than anything, right? And I also, you know we have kids who come here because there's some piece of the program that inspires them, whether it's the trails and running or the horseback riding program or the music program or the ceramics program. There may be some piece of the puzzle that resonates for them, but we're just as excited for them to the kid who's passionate about art and ceramics. We're passionate to make sure that they get out and learn how to ride a horse. That's a good thing, and try some new and different things. um, and so in any case, I would say, there is no magical combination of, oh, you've got to have this GPA and, that test score. We don't put much stock in that stuff. What we do put stock in is we want to see students who've had a demonstrated path of success prior to being to Midland. As I said, we're not remedial, we're not therapeutic, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so they need to be on a trajectory where they are, it looks like they're ready to suck the marrow out of life,
Mhm.
because we want to be with them for that. And we want to help them do that. And those are the things that inspire us. And we had to turn away a lot of families this year, especially in the current moment. All of a sudden, who we are, what we do, and where we are, felt a lot more relevant and important to people. And the phone was ringing in August, and we said, "Sorry, we're full," and so I think we'll be challenged in the future, to deal with, the consequences of growing enrollment and selectivity. And well, these are two great kids, but we can only take one of them. So that's coming. But I think we'll be committed, to doing our best to engage with the students, interview, talk to them, ask them to talk about in their application process the fit to Midland to them. Because if they discover some portion of that, it does not have to be perfect, um, that's what will make the experience resonate, and that's what will make for a great class, a great year, and a great 4 years, for each individual student and the entire community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I've certainly seen that quite a lot with the pandemic, that there's a lot more interest in rural and
Yeah, rural boarding. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So in terms of your application process, mentioned the interview and some of these other indicators. What else are you guys looking for, or has anything changed in light of pandemic?
Yeah, like so many schools, we were never that fixated on test scores and everything else. And I think this year they're optional, and we're evaluating whether they'll be permanently so. There's some exceptions to that. International students, we don't offer an ESL program, so there are minimums around TOEFL scores, right? And we need some way to evaluate that. And so, we're still using some of those tools. And it is a portfolio. It's not just about your grades in seventh and eighth grade or your recommendations or what you write in your short answer questions on the application or what we hear from you in the interview. It's all of that. It's that package, right? That said, if a student sort of brings their whole heart to it, and we really encourage students to lead the process, leave mom and dad out of it. You want to come to Midland, apply to Midland,
Mhm.
right? And we'd rather see all the spelling mistakes on an application and know that you did it rather than see an application that's perfect and wonder whether you didn't.
Yeah, makes sense. So do you have any final advice for families and students embarking on the boarding school process?
Yeah, I mean, in particular, boarding schools are a place for students, not just Midland, but boarding schools in general are a place for students, who really are ready for more, who really want, a deeply engaging experience. You want to spend the high school with a 5-minute transaction and passing period between academics and athletics, not a 40-minute drive. Where they want to be in an environment where their coach is their teacher and their teacher is their coach. They want to be in an environment where not only everybody gets to play, whether it's a sports team or the school play, but where we're still striving to do those things at high levels. I think it's vitally important that when a student arrives at school for high school, 9th grade, or if they're changing schools, 10th grade, that when they get there, they have a suspicion that they might be in the perfect place. And so the degree to which we can partner with families to figure that out, we're acutely aware we are not for all students and all families. And it doesn't bother us at all when somebody comes and looks and says, well, that's really cool. It's not for me, but that's really cool. Great, it's fine. Heaven forbid, we'd hate to have a student who got here and discover, wait, I don't want this at all, right? So that process of discovery and finding your best fit, right? And a place that resonates for you. That's what this journey and search should be about in terms of what's the next school. It doesn't matter, kids from all over the place, and the schools all over the place. I just don't believe there's one perfect school, for all kids. But there is a perfect school for each kid. And so the degree in which we can partner with families to do that, we relish that opportunity. And I really encourage individual students in particular to not only do their homework, but to talk to people, to ask, to really start developing their own agency. When you get to boarding school, there'll be a lot of expectations about, you got to look after yourself. You got to get up in the morning. You need an alarm clock. Mom is not going to wake you up. And so might as well start in the application process to develop those skills of responsibility and everything else. But if you do so, and you get into that environment, right? What you will find at a place like Midland is that we will give students profound levels of freedom and opportunity to engage with their own learning and pursue their own individual passions, right? To a degree that is really unusual, right? And that's something that's common to many boarding schools, and it certainly is in Midland.
Great. Well, thank you.